Chapter 15, Part 1 of More Love to Thee, The Life and Letters of Elizabeth Prentiss. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Jennifer Painter. More Love to Thee, The Life and Letters of Elizabeth Prentiss by George Prentiss. Chapter 15, Part 1. Forever with the Lord, 1878. But a bound into home immortal and blessed, blessed years. 1. Enters upon her last year on earth. A letter about the home at Greylock. Her motive in writing books. Visit to the aquarium. About worry. Her painting. Saturday afternoons with her. What she was to her friends. Resemblance to Madame de Broglie. Recollections of a visit to East River. A picture of her by an old friend. Goes to Dorset. Second Advent doctrine. Last letters. Mrs. Prentiss crossed the threshold of her last year on earth with hands and thoughts still unusually busied. Her weekly Bible reading, painting in oils and in watercolours, needlework, and other household duties left her no idle moment. My fire is so full of irons, she wrote, that I do not know which one to take out. Nor was her heart less busy than her hands and brain. Twice in January, once in February, and again in April, death invaded the circle of her friends. And when her friends were in trouble, she was always in trouble too. These deaths led to earnest talk with her husband on the mystery of earthly existence and on the power of faith in Christ to sustain the soul in facing its great trials. I am filled with ever fresh wonder at this amazing power, she said. Such subjects always interested her deeply, never more so than at this time when, although she knew it not, her feet were drawing so near to the pearly gates. The keynote of her being throughout this last winter was one of unwonted seriousness. A certain startling intensity of thought and feeling showed itself every now and then. It was painfully evident that she was under a severe strain, both physical and mental. Again and again, as spring advanced, the anxiety of her husband was aroused to the highest pitch by what seemed to him indications that the unresting, ever-active spirit was fast wearing away the frail body. At times, too, there was a light in her eye, and in her face an unearthly, absolutely angelic expression, to use her own words about her little Bessie 26 years before, that filled him with a strange wonder, and which, after her departure, he often recalled as prophetic of the coming event and the glory that should follow. But while to his ear an undertone of unusual seriousness, deepening ever and anon into a strain of the sweetest tenderness and pathos, ran through her life during all these early months of 1878, there was little change in its outward aspect. She was often gay and full as ever of bright, playful fancies. Never busier, so was she never more eager to be of service to her friends, and never was she more loving to her children, or more thoughtful of their happiness. She proposed for their gratification and advantage to write 4 new books, one for each of them, provided only they and their father would furnish her with subjects. The plan seemed to please her greatly, and, had she been spared, would probably have been carried into effect, for it was just the sort of stimulus she needed to set her mind in action. Once furnished with a subject, her pen, as has been said before, always moved with the utmost ease and rapidity. But while she wrote very easily, she did not write without reflection. She had a keen sense of character in all its phases, and her individual portraits, like those of Katie, Mrs. Gray and Margaret, Aunt Avery and Kaiser Millet were worked out with the utmost care, the result of years of observation and study being embodied in them. And here, in passing, it may not be out of place to dwell for an instant upon her motives and experience as an author. From first to last she wrote, not to get gain or to win applause, but to do good, and herein she had her reward, good measure, pressed down and running over. But of that kind of reward which gratifies literary taste and ambition, she had almost none. Her books, even those most admired by the best judges, and which had the widest circulation, both at home and abroad, attracted but little attention from the press. The organs of literary intelligence and criticism scarcely noticed them at all. Nor is it known that any attempt was ever made to analyse any of her more striking characters, or to point out the secret of her power and success as a writer. To be sure, she had never sought or counted upon this sort of recognition, and yet that she was keenly alive to a word of discriminating praise will appear from a letter to Mrs. Condict, dated January the 20th. The burglary was on this wise, as far as we know. One man stood on the front steps, and another slipped the hasp to one of the parlour windows, stepped in, took a very valuable French clock, given me on my silver wedding day, and all the hats and overcoats from the hall. This was all they had time to do before our night watchman came round. They left the window wide open, and at 4 a.m. Pat rang the bell and informed Mr. Prentiss that such was the case. We feel it a great mercy that we were not attacked and maltreated. Poor A was sitting up in bed, hearing what was going on, but being alone on the 3rd floor, did not dare to move. I have just finished a short story called Gentleman Jim, which I am going to send to Scribner's. Very likely it will get overlooked and lost. I received not long ago a letter from Mr. Cady about Greylock, which he had just read. It was a gratification to both my husband and myself, as the most discriminating letter I ever received. And after the first rush of pleasure, the evil one troubled me, off and on, for 2 or 3 hours. But at last I reminded him that I long ago chose to cast in my lot with the people of God, and so be off the line of human notice or applause, and that I was glad I had been enabled to do it, since literary ambition is unbecoming a Christian woman. There are 500 other things I should say if you were here. The following is a part of the letter referred to. The day after New Year's, I was visited with a severe cold and general prostration that has kept me in my bed, giving me time. As soon as I was strong enough to read, I had The Home brought. After reading it, I felt I ought to tell you how deeply I was impressed with the usefulness, excellence, and spirit of the book. As to its usefulness, you are to be envied. To have brought light, as I believe you have, to a large number of people upon the most precious and vital interests of life is something worth living and suffering for. The good sense, wisdom, experience, and Christian faith embodied in it must make it a strong helper and friend to many a home in trouble, and to many perplexed and discouraged hearts, who will doubtless rise up some day to call you blessed. Though you cared less about the manner than the matter, I was impressed by its literary qualities. The scene at the death of Mrs. Gray and parting of herself and Margaret is as highly artistic and beautiful as anything I can think of. The contrast of good and bad, or good and indifferent, is common enough, but the contrast of what is noble and what is saintly is something infinitely higher and subtler. I can't imagine anything more exquisitely tender and beautiful than Mrs. Gray's departure, but it is the more realised by the previous action of Margaret. The few lines in which this is told bring their whole character, in each case, vividly before you. But I see that if the book had previously to this point been differently written, it would have been impossible to have rendered this scene so remarkably impressive. The story of Eric is extremely quaint and charming. It is a vein I am not familiar with in your writings. It is a little classic. This quaint child's story and the death of Mrs. Gray affect me as a fine work of art affects one whenever I recall them. The trite saying is still true. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. You know children complain of some sweets that they leave a bad taste, and works of fiction often do with me. I feel tired and dissatisfied after I have passed out of their excitements. But the heavenly atmosphere of this book left me better. I know that the blessed Spirit must have influenced you in the writing of it, and I doubt not his blessing will accompany its teachings. Now will you excuse this blotty letter, written in bed, and accept my thanks for all the good your book has done me. The following is her reply. Dear Mr. Cady, your letter afforded me more satisfaction than I know how to explain. It is true that I made up my mind, as a very young girl, to keep out of the way of literary people, so as to avoid literary ambition. Nor have I regretted that decision. Yet the human nature is not dead in me, and my instincts still crave the kind of recognition you have given me. I have had heaps of letters from all parts of this country, England, Scotland, Ireland, Germany, and Switzerland, about my books, till I have got sick and tired of them. And the reason I tired of them was, that in most cases there was no discrimination. People liked their religious character, and of course I wanted them to do so. But you appreciate and understand everything in Greylock, and have, therefore, gratified my husband and myself. Not a soul out of this house, for instance, has ever so much as alluded to my little Eric, except one friend who said, "We thought that part of the book forced, and supposed A wrote it." Nobody has ever alluded to Margaret, save yourself. I hoped a sequel to this book might be called for, when I meant to elaborate her character. Still, it would have been very hard. I am not sorry that I chose the path in life I did choose. A woman should not live for, or even desire fame. This is yet more true of a Christian woman. If I had not steadily suppressed all such ambition, I might have become a sour, disappointed woman, seeing my best work unrecognized. But it has been my wish to dare to be little and unknown, seen and loved by God alone. Your letter for a few hours did stir up what I had always trampled down, but only for that brief period, and then I said to myself, God has only taken me at my word. I have asked him 1,000 times to make me smaller and smaller, and crowd the self out of me by taking up all the room himself. There is so much of that work yet to be done, that I wonder he ventures to make so many lines fall to me in pleasant places, and that I have such a goodly heritage. I trust he will bless you for your labour of love to me. I do not like the idea of your buying my books. Greylock being for mothers, I never dreamed of men reading it. Have you had The Story Lizzie Told, Six Princesses, The Little Preacher, and Nidworth? Neither of these is really a child's book, and the next time you are sick, if you have not read them, I shall love to send them to you. If this is conceit, I have the effrontery not to be a mite ashamed of it. The following notes to Mrs. Fisher show how pleasantly she sympathised with her teacher as a young mother, while taking lessons of and admiring her as an artist. New York, February the 4th, 1878. What a relief to have the days come long again! On Saturday I found in A's portfolio a study you lent her, exquisite ferns behind the fallen trunk of a tree, and a tiny group of orange-coloured toadstools. I will send it with its two lovely sisters when I get through with them. I wish you could get time to come and see me, or that I could get time to go to see you. But it is my unlucky nature to have a great many irons in the fire at once. I am glad your baby keeps well, and hope he will grow up to be a great comfort to you. February the 23rd. I have just received your letter. I have my hands full, and there is no need to hurry you. As to worry not being of faith, I do not suppose it is. But a young mother cannot be all faith. I do not envy people who love so lightly that they have no wringing out of the heart when they lose their dear ones. Nor can I understand her who says she can sit and read the newspaper while her babies are crying. None are so old as they who have outlived enthusiasm. And who should be enthusiastic if a mother may not? I don't think God has laid it up against me that I nearly killed myself for the sake of my babies, because when He took two away within 3 months of each other, my faith in Him did not falter. Dear Mrs. Fisher, if you love God, nothing but His best things will ever come to you. This is the experience of a very young old woman, and I hope it will comfort you. April the 21st. Such a fight as I have had with your exquisite studies, and how I have been beaten! I failed entirely in the golden rod, and do not get the brilliant yellow of the mullein flower. One could not easily fail on the Sagittarius, and the clover was tolerable. I think I will take no more lessons at present, as I have much to do in getting another boy fitted for college. After I get settled at Dorset, I want to make a desperate effort to paint from nature, and if I have any success, send to you for criticism. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread, and I am afraid you will be disgusted with my work, which will be in the dark, since I have had no instruction in copying nature. Perhaps you may put alongside of the rejection of your picture a lady's telling me about one of my books into which I had thrown an experience of the last 30 years of my life. There was nothing in it. Il faut souffrir pour être belle. As long as memory lasts, I shall rejoice that I have seen and studied your work. I remember what a splendid fellow your baby was a year ago. It will depend on your maternal prayers and discipline whether he grows up to be your comfort. A few extracts from her letters will give further glimpses of the manner in which she passed these closing months of her life in New York, especially of her delight in the weekly Bible reading. One of the ladies who attended it thus refers to that exercise. You remember that for 1 or 2 years she was a member of a small circle that met weekly for Bible study. When the leader of this circle removed from the city, Mrs. Prentiss was urgently requested to become its teacher, and she consented to do so. For the last 4 years of her life, she threw her whole soul into this exercise. Every week the appointed morning found her surrounded by a little group of from 8 to 15, each with an open Bible, and all intent less to analyze the Word of God than to feed upon it and grow thereby. And what a wonderful teacher she was! Not neglectful of any helps that dictionary or commentator might give, her chief source of light was none of these, but was received in answer to the promise, "If any man will do the will of God, he shall know of the doctrine." She wished the service to be entirely informal, and that each one present should do her part to aid in the study. This brought out diverse views and different standards of opinion. Here her keen intellect, her warm heart, the rich stores of her experience, and her sanctified common sense, all found play, and many of the words that fell from her lips dwell in the memory as little less than inspired. The last winter of this service showed some marked differences from previous years. As eager as ever to have questions asked and answered by others, yet from the moment she commenced to speak, she scarcely paused till the hour was finished, her eyes sparkling and her whole manner intensely earnest. Often those words of the psalmist passed through my mind, "The zeal of thy house hath eaten me up." Her love for her work and zeal in doing it were visibly consuming her. At the last meeting I asked her if she should commence the Bible reading at Dorset immediately. She said no, she must rest a little, she would wait till her garden was made. When next I heard from her flowers and her Bible study, she had made the bound into home immortal, and all who loved her must rejoice with her, else have we failed to learn one of the clearest lessons of her life. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. To Mrs. Condict, February the 14th, 1878. Is it possible I had portiere on the brain when I wrote you last? I thought I had just caught the disease. I am very fond of needlework, but for years have nearly abandoned it, because I could not thread my needle. But the portiere is made with a large worsted needle, and will give me pleasant work for the evening. I am getting my hand in on a contumacious closet door that won't stay open in my bedroom. Imitation macaroni, by the author of Pemaquid. Boil hominy overnight. Next day's dinner prepare like macaroni, with a little milk and grated cheese and bake. Good for a change, and cheaper. March the 9th. What an improvement on the old fashion of reading the Bible is the present search of the Word. It is, as you say, fascinating work. I have just given M an admirable book called Emphatic Diaglot, being the Greek Testament with a literal translation. Still, even that can be misunderstood by one who has a false theory to sustain. The spiritual conflicts I have passed through have been a blessing, as I am beginning to see. I can understand better how such conflicts may prepare one for work. This afternoon I have, as usual, been getting ready for the Wednesday reading, and as I was requested to speak of the Holy Spirit, have been poring over the Bible, and am astonished at the frequency and variety of passages in which he is spoken of. But I feel painfully unfit to guide even this little circle of women, and would be so glad to sit as a learner. Some of the children were going last Friday night to see the aquarium and some educated horses and dogs there, and they persuaded me to go. The performance was wonderful, but I could not help thinking of all these poor animals had gone through in learning all these incredible feats, each horse responding to his own name, each dog barking in response to his, two dogs hanging a third, cutting him down when he lay apparently dead, other dogs driving in a cart and carrying away the body. Others waltzed on their hind legs, and others jumping the rope. Two horses played seesaw, and one rolled a barrel up an inclined plane with his forelegs. He hated to do it, but the marvellous fishes and sea flowers charmed me most. To Mrs. Reed, New York, March the 13th, 1878. We had a variety of losses, and I undertook, therefore, to manufacture most of my Christmas gifts, which were chiefly umbrella racks. This took time. Then my Bible reading uses up pretty much one day. I never felt so unfit for it, or more determined to keep it up as long as one would come. Besides that, I have read and painted more or less, and sewed a good deal. On the whole, have had more vacation than work, at least one looking on would say so. But we all lead two lives, and one of them is penetrated and understood by no mortal eye. I heard such a sermon from Dr. Bevan last Sunday night on the text, "They saw God and did eat and drink." He divided mankind into four classes: those who do eat and drink and do not see God, those who do not see him and do not eat and drink, those who see him and do not eat and drink, he handled them tenderly, and those who see him and yet eat and drink. I hope I have made its outline plain to you. It took hold of me. To Mrs. Donner, New York, April the 26th, 1878. I am living my life among breakings up. You gone, Mrs. Smith about to flee to Northampton, and our neighbour Miss W. storing her furniture and probably leaving New York for good. On the other hand, M spends most of her time in helping Mr. and Mrs. Talbot get to rights in apartments they have just taken. Mr. T, as I suppose you know, is pastor of our mission, and as good as gold. God has been pleased greatly to bless two ladies who attend the Bible reading, and I am sure he loves to have us study his word. The more I dig into it, the richer I find it, and I have had some delightful hours this winter in preparing for my Wednesday work. There is to be a women's exchange in this city, where everything manufactured by them, except underclothing, will be exposed for sale: embroidery, pickles, preserves, confectionery, and articles rejected by the Society of Decorative Art. I hope it will be a success and help many worthy women all over the land to help themselves. I find it hard to consent to your having, at your age, to flit about from home to home, but a loving Father has a mansion for you beyond all the changes and chances of this strange, complicated life. If He gives you His presence, that will be a home. I wish you could visit us at Dorset. A visit to Dorset was afterward arranged, and one of Mrs. Prentiss's last letters was addressed to this old friend, giving her directions how to get there. To Mrs. Condict, New York, May the 6th, 1878. My last Bible reading, or rather one of the last, was on prayer. As I could not do justice to it in one reading, I concluded to make a resume of the whole subject. Though I devoted all the readings to this topic last summer, yet it loomed up wonderfully in this resume. Last week the subject was the precious blood of Christ, and in studying up the word precious, I lighted on these lovely verses, Deuteronomy 33:13-16. Since I began to study the Bible, it often seems like a new book, and that passage thrilled the ladies as a novelty. I am to have but one more reading. The last sermon I heard was on lying. That is not one of my besetting sins, but, on the other hand, I push the truth too far, haggling about evils better left alone. A has just finished a splendid plaque to order, a Japanese figure, with exquisite foliage in black and grey as background. I have a widow lady every Saturday to paint with me. She has a large family, limited means, and delicate health, and I want to aid her all I can. She enjoys these afternoons so much and is doing so well. The lady herself thus recalls these afternoons. How dearly I should love to add but one little flower to her wreath of immortelles. I cherish memories of her as among the pleasantest of my life. I recall her room so bright and cheery, just like herself, and all the incidents of those Saturday afternoons. When she first asked me to paint with her, I thought it very kind, but with her multiplicity of cares, felt it must be burdensome to her, and that possibly she would even forget the invitation, and so I hesitated about going. But when the week came round, everything was made ready to give me a cordial welcome. Again and again I found my chair, palette, and other materials waiting for me, while she sat in her little nook, busy as a bee over some painting of her own. One day, passing about the room, I saw on her bookshelves, arranged with order and precision, 9 little butter plates in the form of pansies. I uttered an exclamation of delight, and she from her corner, with the artlessness of a child, said, "I put them there for you to see." Another time she sprang up with her quick, light step and ran to the yard to fetch a flower for me to copy, apparently thoughtless of 2 flights of stairs to tax her strength. Sometimes she would read to me verses of poetry that pleased her. Once I remember her throwing herself at my feet, and when I stopped to listen to the reading, she said, "Oh, go right on with your painting." Now she would relate some amusing anecdote that almost convulsed me with laughter, and then again speak of some serious theme with such earnestness of feeling. She was eager to give of her store of strength and cheer to others, but the store seemed inexhaustible. The more she gave, the more one felt that there was enough and to spare. I looked forward to my little weekly visit as to an oasis in the desert. Not that all else was bleak, but that spot seemed to me so very refreshing and attractive. Little did I think, when she loaded me down that last day with all I could carry, then ran down to the parlour to show me some choice articles there which she knew would give me pleasure, little did I think that I should see her again no more. Not a day passed after leaving her that she was not an inspiration to me. While painting a wayside flower, I would think, "Mrs. Prentiss would like this," or "In the fall I must show that to Mrs. Prentiss." Even in my dreams she was present with me, and one morning, only a little while before she passed from us, I waked with a heavy burden upon my spirits. for it seemed to me as if she were gone. The impression was so strong that I spoke of it at the time, and for days could not throw it off. But at last, saying to myself, "Oh, it is only a dream," I answered her little note, making, of course, no reference to my strange feelings in regard to her. Her letter, by a singular mistake, is dated Cowenfels, October the 10th, 1878, nearly 2 months after she had fallen asleep. How just like her is this passage in it. "I wish you could leave your little flock and take some rest with us. It would do you good, I am sure. Is it impossible? You do look so tired." My letter in reply must have been one of the very last received by her. In it I spoke of having just reread Stepping Heavenward and Aunt Jane's Hero, and of having enjoyed them almost as much as at the first. This was perhaps one reason why she had been so constantly in my thoughts. When the news came that she had left us, I was at first greatly shocked and grieved, for I felt that I had lost no ordinary friend. But when I considered how complete her life had been in all that makes life noble and beautiful, and how meet it was that, having borne the burden and heat of the day, she should now rest from her labours, it seemed selfish to give way to sorrow, and not rather to rejoice that she had gone to be with Christ. End of the beginning of part 1.